I'm Rachel Humphrey with It's Personal Stories, a hospitality podcast, and I'm really excited to be joined on the show today by Bashar Wali, the founder and CEO of This Assembly and Practice Hospitality. Bashar, welcome to It's Personal Stories.
Thank you for having me. Delighted to be here.
We are going to jump right in, and everybody knows that one of the reasons I love the hospitality industry so much is that we each carve our own path to leadership. No two paths need to be exactly the same. So tell us a little bit about your journey, where you started out, how you got where you are today, and if there were any pivotal moments along the way that you really think shaped that trajectory for you.
Happy to. So I grew up in the Middle East, and we have a quote that goes as follows. When a stranger shows up at your door, feed him for 3 days before you ask him who he is, where he's from, or where he's going to. Because by then he'll either have the strength to answer or you'll be such good friends it won't matter. So it's interesting, this hospitality thing that we all sort of overcomplicate, in my opinion. We are all born with hospitality in us. We know how to welcome people, we know how to make people feel good. Some of us are better at it than others, but it's not a educational thing. It really is an innate thing in us humans. So I came to the United States as an immigrant legally. I'd like to underscore and emphasize that, to go to college. I went to Johnson and Wales University in Providence, Rhode Island, and studied hotel restaurant management. And frankly, I was a pretty terrible student. I recall never buying a book ever. Like, I'd borrow it from a friend the night before or from the library. I worked full time to go to college, but I felt like, what are they teaching me in college about hospitality? I'm confused. Like, mathematics, accounting, etc., were interesting. Got out of college and literally worked as a PBX operator, which was interesting for a non-native speaker to be answering the phone. And I'm sure a lot of young audience don't know what that means, PBX operator. I know it wasn't one of those plug in the cables, it was an actual phone. And that was it. That was the very first job and very last job I ever applied for. Really worked from the ground up. And I always felt that getting your hands dirty, as it were, was really the way to learn, rather than sitting in a classroom and learning it somehow. Dealing with people that are on the outside, guests, or on the inside, teammates, was the way you're going to grow. And I was one of those guys who literally never said no to anything. I mean, I worked absolutely every department, and not in a fancy management training program. I actually cleaned toilets and made beds and cooked in the kitchen and dishwashed as part of my desire to learn, and kind of grew from there. Learned uh, learned account. I've done accounting. I did back of house. I did front of house. Then managed one hotel. Then managed multiple hotels. Then sort of pivoted into the real estate side of the business, always within hotel companies, deploying capital, acquiring, refinancing, etc. So then I felt I really, really gave myself, through hard work, a very well-rounded education on the ground in the School of Hard Knocks. And you ask about pivotal moments. There's a couple of them. One was, I had this mentor, GM, who was young as a GM. He was 28 at the time, I think. And my goal was to like beat him. I was like, I am going to beat you. I'm going to make GM younger than you. And I recall my first GM job was 27 in a 300 plus room property that is union. And it was such a big learning experience because I walk into a staff meeting and I am literally the youngest person in the room by a lot. And sort of really understanding what it takes to earn people's respect, regardless of your age or your background or your education. So those were sort of formative moments in my career. But the one I like to talk about the most goes as follows. I am a front office manager at some hotel, and the vice president of the company walks by. And this guy is like 3 levels, 4 levels above me. And he says, hey, you do a good job here. I said, great, thank you. He says, do you want a promotion? I said, sure. He said, okay, why don't you go to this hotel and we'll give you a promotion. I said, well, okay, when do you want me there? He goes, this was a Tuesday. He goes, can you be there next Monday? I said, sure. So I go there next Monday, I do my thing, and I was sort of doing the job of rooms division manager from for office manager. 6 months go by, guy walks by, he goes, oh yeah, you're here now. I forgot you're here. Did we ever adjust your title or your salary or anything? I said, no. He says, well, why didn't you ask? I said, because I knew you would eventually catch on to it, and gave me more money that I would have never asked for and a bigger title that I would have asked for. And the reason why that moment really resonated with me, and I tell people, do good work and the money will come. But if the money is your North Star, you'll make a lot of bad decisions along the way. This was a great move for my career, and I ended up getting more out of it than I would have ever asked. So if you do what you love and you're passionate about it, all the other things will catch up. But if you're only doing it because you're building a title for your resume or trying to get more money, I think ultimately it backfires, and it does not give you the rewards you would have gotten.
I mean, so many great lessons in there, certainly the learn by doing. I love the concept too of your title doesn't automatically give you respect. That's something you have to earn regardless of what level you are in your career. And then certainly to follow the work and the passion and the money will come. That brings me to a couple of aspects of leadership that I'd really love to follow up on. One is this idea I hear sometimes people are like, I knew I was born to be a leader. I was born to be a CEO. And others say, to this day, I don't even know if I'd consider myself a leader from that standpoint. Where do you fall on that spectrum of things? Did you feel like you were always kind of bred to be a future leader?
Really interesting question, and I'd be arrogant to say I did. I obviously didn't. I came from very, very humble beginnings. Like I said, I worked full time in college to pay for myself. There's always this. One of my favorite quotes is "lead, follow, or get out of the way." Right? And I feel like often in situations, and I'll tell you an actual story about this. I felt like I stepped up because nobody else did. I didn't do it because I was smarter or better or more educated, but I just did it and no one else did it. And I remember there was a transition period for GMs. I was front office manager at a hotel, and a GM left and another was going to come. And the vice president, when the new GM came, gave him a turnover report. And the turnover report said in it, Bashar Wali, really good guy, works hard. However, he sometimes thinks he's the GM and when he's not. And I'm saying, well, yeah, I did, because there was no one else. There was a vacuum, there was a gap, and I stepped in, not for glory, not for anything, but I always took ownership in what I did. And if there was a decision to be made and no one was going to make it, I stepped up and I made it and took the responsibility for making it. I was willing to put myself, my job, my career on the line because I knew someone had to make the decision. So this idea of leadership, I think there's something innate in us that allows us to be those people that are, the leaders or the followers. So, but can someone be taught it? Absolutely. Did I think I have it? No, but I think through trial and error, I realized I had it because I was the guy who was stepping up to the plate when nobody else did, with no fear. I mean, that's the thing is you cannot be afraid and you have to be vulnerable. And we learned this through the pandemic, by the way, this idea of great leaders are very vulnerable. They don't know everything. They don't pretend to know everything. And I was always the guy that said, I know nothing about this. I'll give it a shot. I'll jump up and try it. And I think you learn along the way and you get respected for it that way.
I actually have some follow-up questions I want to ask you about leadership, but I'm really interested in what you were just talking about, how you left one role for another role, not knowing what it was, not knowing what it would lead to. Do you consider yourself in general a risk taker? Do you think that that's what would define you as a human? Do you find it in your career, but maybe not in other parts? What are some of the risks that you think you've taken? How do you analyze them and decide which ones are worthwhile?
I mean, honestly, again, yes, I am a very big risk taker if I believe passionately about something. I'm not gambling, it's not a gamble. I have to strongly have the conviction that this is the right thing that I must do, and I'm willing to take the risk for it. And I say, look, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do my best. And if my best isn't good enough, that is all I can give it, and that is all I can offer. So I never worry about, am I good enough? Am I not good enough? I always know that I'm going to give it my all, and if I'm not smart enough or if I'm not hardworking enough, I gave it my all, in my opinion. And if that wasn't good enough for you, then it wasn't on me, it was on you, so to speak. But look, when you're young and you don't have a lot of responsibilities, you don't have a family, you don't have a mortgage, it's a lot easier, obviously. But if there are other people depending on you, particularly in the work construct, like I am not going to take a risk in a hotel that I'm managing that could backfire and end up causing people their jobs or their hours. But if it's for me personally and it doesn't have an effect on those around me, I will absolutely take the risk. And, no guts, no glory, as it were. But you have to be passionate about it. Don't just do it because it's risky and you want to take the risk. Do it because you absolutely, positively believe in what it is that you're doing. Because 99% of the time, I think passion is what gets us there more than skill, more than hard work, because passion really drives a lot of what we do. Again, in our industry, if I am operating on someone's brain, I am not taking any risk. I'm going to follow the book. But for what we do, like what is taking risk? Think about it. It really isn't that complicated. We're just hosting people in our homes every day. That is all that this business is all about, in my opinion.
Do you think you take those risks with a lot of fact-based data and other things? Is it a gut instinct? Is it some combination of those two things for you?
It's always a combination, but I'm always going to follow my heart more than my head. And if they were competing, my heart's always going to win. Again, because of the line of business that we're in.
Yeah, that's so
So
interesting.
passion, 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 passion. Do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life. I mean, I don't want to sort of perpetuate these corporate taglines as it were, but I truly believe in it. I am so lucky because I don't work. This is not work. I wake up in the morning excited jumping out of bed. Well, first I get up for that cup of coffee, that's my drug. But then I am excited about what I do. I love what I do. And I tell people often, if it doesn't set your soul on fire, it is not worth the burn. Do not do it. If leadership is not your thing, don't do it. That's okay. We need as many leaders as we do followers. We can't all be leaders, right? And that's why I think it works, because we have some people that are adverse, they don't want it, and others that do. So that tension and that balance is what makes everything work really well.
I love that. Thinking about your leadership evolution, there are areas that as we continue to progress, we either through practice or through study and intentionality become much better. And then sometimes as we progress, there are things that get worse over time. Can you think of something in your leadership style that has maybe gotten better over time, and then maybe something that's gotten a little worse over time?
As you know, I have the patience of a 3-year-old on a sugar diet, I say. So understanding that the nuance of learning styles, like I'll say something to someone and I'll be like, what are you waiting for? Let's go. I told you. And this idea of some people need to process, like they need to take a minute to process. My brain can't understand that concept. I'm like, I told you, it's easy, go. Like, don't process, just go. So I feel like I've gotten a lot better in understanding learning styles from colleagues, people that work for me, people that I work with, because it just makes you a better leader. Because we in our, we A personalities assume the whole world is like us. And God, if the whole world was like me, I do not want to live on this planet. So really understanding that difference in learning style was crucial for me to become a better leader, to really take it all in and make sure that I give people the space they need to take the information in the way they need to do it, not the way I expect them to do it. In the very same token, I feel like my patience has run even less than it was before, but it's sort of something you have to really work on, because it's not about me. It doesn't matter. It is not about me. It's about others. And another one that I feel like I've improved on a lot is this idea we talked about it a minute ago of vulnerability. And the pandemic was a fantastic example, because here I am, I'm standing in front of a bunch of teammates that are looking to me for guidance, and I'm looking at them and I'm saying, guys, I've never done this before. I have no idea, but we're in it together and we're going to get through it together. But I don't know any more than you do. I don't know what happens tomorrow. I don't know when we're going to reopen. I don't. And I think when you don't pretend, people respect you for it. But your job is also to assure. So you don't want to create panic. So vulnerability isn't about kind of creating panic. And vulnerability has been a skill that I've really honed in over time. And I think I've gotten a lot better at it. I'm willing to tell you, I have no idea. Let's figure it out together, rather than pretending to know everything. So I have more patience for more things, but less patience for more things. So I guess it's a double-edged sword, as it were.
It's interesting. I've actually heard recently several people identify patience as one of their depleting skills. So maybe there's something to that, whether it be timing or where we are in our careers, or as we learn to develop other skills, that's something that maybe
And
doesn't.
having children teaches you obviously patience. You can't they are, in fact, my wife often will say, dude, we don't work for you. Like,
No,
you've got to do it on like, you can't be this go 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 sort of very systematic thing. And again, learning styles, it really is fascinating when you dig deeper into it. They're not slower, they're not less intelligent, they're not less hardworking. It's just their brain is wired differently. So
differently.
while my information goes from here and comes out immediately and it's ready, theirs takes a longer path. But it doesn't mean it's, in fact, I'd argue it's probably better, because they're more thoughtful about the response. They're not just jumping in like I would, right? Which has gotten me in trouble sometimes.
And you talked about having vulnerability and really being something that came to the forefront during the pandemic. I think that a lot of us have talked about that. It is one of maybe the lasting impacts of the pandemic from a leadership standpoint is much more vulnerability from a lot of our leaders, whether it be sharing or admitting that we don't know how to do things or leaning into maybe a more empathetic side of leadership. So I think you hit that one right on the head.
And
One,
people respect you more for it,
I
100%.
agree 100%. And that's one of the things I love actually about this podcast is how vulnerably everybody shares their stories, their strategies, the things that they think they're strong and the things that maybe could use some improvement. One of the things that I have found fascinating about this podcast series is how many leaders have identified their curiosity as one of the things that they think has really propelled their careers. Whether it was like you of saying, well, if nobody else raises their hand, I'm going to step up and do it. Or I went to work in all of these different areas so that I understood the whole business, whether it's teaching ourselves new skills or developing new areas. Is that something a way you would describe yourself? And I am curious about something that Bashar is curious about today, maybe one thing in the hospitality industry and one thing in life in general.
So I think the curiosity part, and you already know this, Rachel. I think I have the neurotic relationship with hotels that is a one night stand. My claim to fame is I never stay in any hotel more than once or one night out of curiosity. So if I'm in New York 3 nights, I move 3 times. My current count in Manhattan is 251 hotels in Manhattan. And if that isn't curiosity, I don't know what is. And I tell people I'll stay at luxury, ultra luxury, and pay whatever, and I'll stay at a hostel and share a room with people doing sketchy things in the middle of the night. And it really has informed my thinking about how I think about hotels. I learn a lot of things. By the way, I learn almost more from the lower end than the higher end because they're more scrappy. They have to think of different ways to sort of do things that come easy to the higher end because they have the budgets for it. So I would say I am a very, very, very curious person in general, particularly for my industry, because I'm always looking for ways to do better. And I tell people the minute you think you know everything, you're dead. You know nothing. I know absolutely nothing, and I learn more and more and more every day. Now, interestingly enough, I feel like we hospitality hotels generally have gone to the same well again and again and again, and we expect different results. And I say, okay, maybe I should look elsewhere. And where I've been looking more and more is retail. I feel retail came to the brink of extinction, as it were. And necessity is the mother of all inventions. So they had to reinvent themselves. So as I look at them, I'm in Portland, Oregon as we speak. Nike is here. I look at Nike. When you walk into a retail store, Nike knows you're not there to buy anything because
Yeah.
you could probably buy it cheaper online, not pay taxes if you live in a tax-free state. Shipping is free, et cetera, et cetera. Why do you want to carry it with you? But they know that they have to build loyalty with you to the brand. So they've thought of their stores now as sort of experiential places where you go in to create loyalty to the brand, not to buy a pair of shoes. So I am looking more and more at retail and how they're addressing the future and the customer to learn from them to bring it into hospitality. In fact, I say we hotels hate people that want to transact with us. We want to make it harder for them. By step 72 on the booking engine, I'm on the zip code field, and you're making me have to change my keyboard from alpha to numerical. Meanwhile, I go to Instagram, I see a pair of shoes I like, and literally within 2 clicks, someone is knocking on my door. They're like, your shoe is here. So, really understanding what's happening with retail has been very, very interesting. Now, broadly in life, I hate trends because by definition they have a shelf life, they expire quickly. I'm a keen observer of human behavior, which takes decades, sometimes centuries to change. So I'm watching how generationally the millennials, the younger millennials and the Gen Zers, how they're interacting with the world, what's important to them, what gets them excited. We're watching a lot of literally generational shift between us and those generations, and how they interact with hotels is of great interest to me. And I'm really, really a keen observer of it to see how we can pivot to accommodate their needs.
Well, you said two things there that really resonated with me. One is learning from other industries. I think that's such an important thing, especially because hospitality tends to be maybe among the least innovative of so many. You mentioned doing the same thing. But I loved what you said about the generational, because, of course, you and I know that you and I met recently through a panel that was talking about generational impacts on the hospitality industry from a booking standpoint, from a marketing standpoint. And it's one of the most interesting conversations that I have probably had this year, because there's so much to learn, and it changes every single day. So when you talk about innovation or the lack thereof, there's such a great opportunity within the industry for innovation there. You also told me when we first met about the never staying in a hotel more than one night. And I am fascinated by it. I'm overwhelmed by it. It would not work with my personality. Although I never want to go back to the same city twice or the same country twice. I understand all of that. But talk a little bit about managing business travel. In the weeks leading up to now, you've been gone to many countries over many days. You're on the road a pretty consistent part of the year. Tell me a little bit about, do you have tricks you use for managing business travel? And are you able to incorporate, because of your love of the industry, maybe your personal life or your family into that business travel as one of your strategies?
So first of all, I love doing it all myself. I don't rely on a third party, not an assistant or a travel agent or anything. Because to me, learning part of the experience is the guest journey. I want to go on your website. I want to see how easy it is. I want to get the confirmation email. I want to learn from that as well. So I do it all myself. Now, in terms of managing it or incorporating my family in it, I don't necessarily incorporate my family into my business travel, but I do a lot of traveling with my family. And I think I've talked about this on the panel you mentioned, and I'll touch on it a little bit about how I want to be in the New York Times, like every hotelier wants, because it's good for our ego. Yet at the end of the day, I took a trip to Asia with my daughter, a 10-day trip. She booked everything that I would not have found on my own, and I loved every single one. And she did it all on TikTok. So when I talk to colleagues in the industry, my colleagues, and I say, listen, it's nice to be in the New York Times so you can brag about it at a party. Go be where your customers are.
Yeah.
Yes, New York Times is good for ego, but TikTok is where the action is at the moment, and that'll change. So in terms of managing my travel, I really do like to try different channels, whether it's I've booked on TikTok, I've sort of got found hotels through Instagram, etc. But any tricks? I mean, look, people ask about jet lag. To your point, I just came off of a London, Dubai, Saudi Arabia, Colorado, and back home. To me, it's you sort of have to really be part of the destination you're going to. I love this quote about travel, and I use this a lot even in business travel. A tourist sees what he came to see. A traveler sees what he sees. I am a traveler. I will roam aimlessly. I will go sit at a coffee shop next to someone and start talking to them. It's less about the monuments and more about the emotions in those moments. And I think it informs how I think about my hotels. Because, we've all talked about this idea, people want to come to your hotel, they want to meet locals in the lobby, they want to feel like a part of the neighborhood. We talk about it, but we don't execute on it. So how do we bring this idea of community, again an overused term, into our hotels is something I think about a lot. But managing my travel is neurotic. To your point, I'm the last minute guy who will book it the day before. So I don't have any tricks or hacks to get a better, and because I move a lot, it really isn't consequential, it seems, because I'm constantly moving. But people say, how do we build loyalty with you? And I say, the only places I go to twice are the places that acknowledge me as a human, not as a statistic, not as a VIP, but as an actual person. Those are the places I will go to more than once. So again, finding the human connection, even in business travel, doesn't matter what kind of travel, that's what I'm looking for.
I love that you book it all yourself too, something I do as well, because you get to know and then you make decisions based on your experiences there. As I mentioned a couple minutes ago, we met through a panel earlier this year. And one of the things we hear a lot from rising leaders is either the lack of public speaking or their fear of public speaking, they think is one of the biggest hurdles to their path to leadership. Coming in to this industry, the way that you did, being an immigrant into the US, is public speaking something you've always been comfortable with as part of your journey? Do you have strategies you use? I can, I can guess from our interactions, not a whole lot. But talk about your evolution maybe for public speaking and how that journey has been for you.
I mean, look, I again, non-native speaker, right? I remember, by the way, my most embarrassing English story ever. I'm on a conference call with 10 people, and some person asks me a question and says the word reciprocity, and I'm drawing a blank. I'm like, what the hell is that? What does it mean? I literally have no idea. So for a while, I was reluctant because of English, but then I said, listen, it doesn't matter. Back to the thing of passion. If you're passionate about something, whether it's broken English, whether you look fully dressed to the T or not, it doesn't matter. I never leave a room ever where someone doesn't say, man, that guy is really crazy about this industry. They may say he's annoying. They may say he's not super smart. They may say any of that stuff. It doesn't matter. But I've never been in a setting where someone didn't say, good God, that guy really is crazy about what he does. And to me, that's ultimately what makes me comfortable on stage. Clearly, over time, the more you do it, the more comfortable you are. And to your earlier comment, I hate preparing for anything because I feel that then it comes across rehearsed. I have a point of view. I will not disrespect you with my point of view, but I will not shy about my point of view. And again, authenticity is one of the most overused words
Mhm.
of today. Authenticity to me means an unapologetic point of view. So I feel that when I stand on stage, and if I deem myself an expert in my industry, what preparation? I should, if I have to prepare, then I'm not an expert. I'm not good enough. I should not be leading a hotel company. If you're going to ask me about some other subject that I'm not is not my field, I may need to prepare. But if it's my business, what am I preparing? I may have to refresh my memory on our numbers if you're asking me anything specific. But otherwise, I just show up as me. I have a point of view. I speak authentically about my point of view. I never disrespect. Now I will be blunt, and some people, like I've called out some brands on stage about some silly things they've done. I will say that, but not disrespectfully. So I think when you don't have a brand, you are your own brand. And I think as leaders, we are our own brand. And I have worked very, very, very hard on building my brand. And by the way, I often get offered money to speak, and I say no. I always turn it down 100% because I don't want to be a paid speaker. To me, that has negative connotations with it. But if you're a leader and you want to build your own brand, you've got to work hard at it. And if you're not comfortable publicly speaking, practice, 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 practice.
Well, and I love too, if you know your topic and if you're passionate about it, you should be picking things that fit that area, and then it becomes less overwhelming, possibly. You just mentioned, well, first of all, you've talked about a lot of your guiding principles. I think a lot of your North Stars throughout the course of our discussion, but just mentioned personal brand as well. Talk to me a little bit. Do you have one guiding star that you follow that you think this is really how I evaluate decisions or how I want to be known?
I hate to go back to what I repeated in nauseum already. I want to be known to be passionate about what I do. And by being passionate about what I do, I think it doesn't matter what the outcome is. I've done it with passion, I've done it with love. And if it succeeds, great. And if it doesn't, I still love the process of doing it. So to me, again, really, I cannot say it enough. Listen, our industry at the end of the day, it's not a great industry. Days and weekends, 365 days a year, 24/7. We're probably on the pay scale on the lower end, so people who love this industry aren't doing it for any other reason other than love. And I say to them, if you don't, go do something else. It is far easier. It'll probably pay you more hours. So my personal mantra has been, I love what I do, and it shows, and I speak about it. And my public speaking, by the way, in addition to being a personal brand, it's also my way of giving back. So hopefully, if someone, I've done a TEDx talk that I know a couple of universities use in their sort of freshman classes about hospitality, and that to me is such a heartwarming thing. I don't want to write a book and sell it. I want to inspire new leaders to follow this path, those who have love for this industry. So my personal brand and my personal mantra is, again, do what you love. You'll never work a day in your life. And if it doesn't set your soul on fire, it's not worth the burn. Just love what you do. It's not worth it. Life's too short.
Well, in the short amount of time we've known each other, I would say that describes you to a T. We are going to run short on time, as I knew we would. So many things we want to talk about. I'm going to ask you a couple of rapid fire questions just to wrap up today. But one of the other things that I think has come out of the pandemic is a renewed focus on self-care and wellness, especially for our employees, our teams, our families. Do you think that that is something that is important to you? Has it always been the case? Are there ways that you take care of yourself? And that some people equate it certainly with fitness, physical fitness, others in different ways. But is
Not
that
me. Look, self care obviously hugely important, and it comes in different ways. By the way, it's funny. My wife and I argue. She loves to read. I don't. So she's reading. I might be, I don't know, scrolling on social media, and she might mock me for it. And I say, well, listen, that's my version of reading. Like people again, back to learning styles and sort of doing things to calm down and take care of yourself. I love finding things. I remember I tell people, like, for example, I know washing dishes was one of my favorite jobs because when you're washing dishes, the whole world could be on fire. It doesn't matter. You're focused on the task in front of you. So when I find things that allow me to turn my brain off and really be focused on what's in front of me, that those are the things how I take care of myself. You will be delighted to hear my wife is also that I love cleaning. Like I love cleaning, like deep cleaning things, because that again makes me focus on nothing but that task that's in front of me. So you'll see me zipping around the house doing random things, picking up, because it allows me to turn my brain off and focus on the task in front of me. And I tell people, and it really is half joking, but what I do for fun in my free time is I think about where am I going next and what a trip am I booking next and where part of the world do I want to see. So travel for me is absolutely oxygen. It is what gets me up in the morning, what gets me excited. There's a big world out there, and I want to see it all. So for me, self-care comes in different flavors. For me, it is finding the one thing that might help me turn my brain off, monkey brain, as it were. That's how I take care of myself, and it comes in different ways.
Well, women everywhere tuning into this podcast are going to suggest to their husbands that deep cleaning is a self-care. So we all thank you for that. Everyone knows I love this final question of advice to our younger selves. I think reflection is so important. Thinking back now to as you graduated maybe from Johnson & Wales, is there something you would tell yourself about either how things turned out or you wish you knew then that you know today?
I mean, honestly, I would say zero regrets. I'm not that guy. I have no regrets. Maybe in hindsight, should I have studied I would be doing exactly the same thing, but maybe I would have studied finance, which I think is more relevant to where I am today than hotel management, which, like I said, I could learn by doing. But I think the one thing I would say to myself is patience is a virtue. Like it took me a long time to really understand, and it affects, personal relationships, professional relationships, because by sort of running, and not focusing on what's in front of you, what message am I sending to you, my colleague, my employee? Like, I want to tell you, you matter, and just being patient and slowing down a little, seeing the forest through the trees, forget about the task in front of you, back up a little, understand the bigger picture. So I always say reflect, pause for a minute. Don't let the words that come in your head just come out of your mouth. Just patience truly is a virtue. I'm still learning to this day. Like I said, I've gained it in some places, lost it in other places, but I wish I could tell my younger self to be a bit more thoughtful and focused and not just jumping, thinking about what to answer rather than actually hearing your question. I did a lot of that and learned the hard way growing up in the industry.
Well, patience is an interesting answer given the desire to be a GM by 27 and what that would have taken from a trajectory standpoint. Bashar, as we wrap up, so much great conversation today, but thinking about our motto of empowering personal success, is there any final advice you want to share with our audience?
Again, what I said earlier, the lead, follow, or get out of the way. I think don't be afraid to step in, raise your hand, jump in. Baptism by fire, learn by mistakes. Never let a good crisis go to waste, as it were. I mean, look at what we've learned from the pandemic. So I would say courage and fear, knowing that we're not saving lives. Whatever it is that you do, even if it's a mistake, it's easy enough in our industry. So take chances, be brave, be authentic, unapologetic point of view, share your opinion, because if we know everything, then our industry is going to hell. We need the next generation to step up, raise their hand, and say, "Why are you doing it this way? We should try it this way." So I can't say that enough. Step up, raise your voice, be authentic, and be part of it. Don't just be an observer.
So much great advice today. I appreciate you joining us so much, sharing your journey, your passion for the industry, as you talked about earlier today, that comes through in everything that you do. But thank you so much again for sharing your story with us.
Thank you. Delighted.
And to those listening at home, we hope you'll head over to itspersonalstories.com and hear from not only Bashar, but the nearly 200 industry leaders that we've had the opportunity to visit with, who've also shared their very personal stories, their journeys to leadership, and the lessons they've learned along the way. Thank you again.